Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Browns Latest. I'm Dave Grendzynski, and this is where you can come and get caught up on some of the latest news involving our Cleveland Browns, and then you also get a 10-minute take along the way. Hey, I'd just like to remind you once again, if you can, please like and subscribe. Like the episodes, subscribe to the channel, and thank you so much for all of you who have already subscribed. We are well on our way now to 2,000 subscribers. I really appreciate everybody who is latching on to this show. And I also want to thank everyone who coached me up on the pronunciation of Shador. Yes, I had a senior moment in a previous episode and mispronounced his name. And I got to tell you, folks, when I do play-by-play on the radio for Spectrum News, that's a pet peeve of mine because my last name and people, it's been butchered all my life. So I really try to be mindful of the pronunciations. And so I slipped the other day. Thank you to everybody who coached me up. I appreciate it. And Shador, I'm sure, appreciates it as well. Now, speaking of Shador, on today's show, we're going to talk about the effect he is already having on this team, and he hasn't even stepped foot on the field. Also, Baker Mayfield. I want to talk about him and how his situation compares to Shador's. End of an era in Cleveland, because typically when a guy takes a pay cut, it's to keep a guy on the team or to get a guy on the team. But this time a pay cut most likely cost the Browns vet his spot on the roster. And we will get to the viewer comments. They just keep getting better and better. But let's start with this. The Shador Effect. And a lot of chatter in the comments, about Shador. And here's the thing. He was drafted by the Browns. Immediately, his two legendary t-shirts and hoodies and everything selling out. They were all sold out this week. Then he's the number one jersey. His jersey's number one, according to the NFL Shop and Fanatics and anybody who's selling NFL jerseys. Number one jersey among the 2025 rookies that are the draft picks. And so his merchandise is flying off the racks. You can't open a laptop without seeing a story about Shador. And here's what I don't understand. There are still people hating on this. I don't get it. What is not to like? The Browns are relevant. We are relevant again. And the league wants us to be relevant. The league is much better when the Cleveland Browns are something worth talking about. And here's the thing with Shador. I don't get it. Everybody wants to talk about what happened with, leading up to the draft. And okay, maybe he mishandled some things, right? Maybe he should have had an agent. I don't know. But here's the thing. Everybody talks about Deion and, and the drama. And I'm not leaning into that at all because here's the thing. I love Deion Sanders. And here's the thing with Deion. Deion wasn't a knucklehead. Deion talked the talk and walked the walk. And if you remember back in those Florida State days, that whole team was like that. Man, I loved the Florida State back in the day, man. They just took names, man. They just kicked ass and took names. That was it. That's all they did. And you know what's funny? It kind of reminds me of what the Cavs did to Miami. They just go out there and just beating people up, right? And so that's what I see here. And Deion staying with his son, I would have done the same thing as a father. I coached my kids as long as I could. And if I could have coached them through high school and into college, I would have. He had the opportunity to do it. He did it. I'm just fine with it. And now you look at Shador, what's not to like? There's no off the field shenanigans. He's already out in the community here in Cleveland. And he didn't call every TV station in town and say, I'm going to John Marshall. He just showed up there. He's not looking for this publicity at this point. And so I hope people can take a step back and look at the positive effect that Shador is having on the Cleveland Browns. We're relevant again, and it's because of him. And now it got me thinking back to the Baker Mayfield situation. Because remember, Baker Mayfield, you want to talk about coming in here with baggage. Baker Mayfield, he got himself arrested. Disorderly conduct, public intoxication, resisting arrest, fleed the police. It's all on tape. And then he kind of puts that behind him at Oklahoma. and he gets drafted, and then he's picking fights with people on Twitter, and he's fighting with Colin Cowherd, and who I think that guy, he was just looking for clicks. So I think that was Colin Cowherd instigated. But why? But Baker wouldn't let it go, and then the way he acted. We're going to talk about this more in depth in a future show. Might even be the next show because this is on my mind. But here's the thing: Baker Mayfield came here with a lot of baggage and really wouldn't shut up, and he just kept going and going and going and going. But nobody cared about that. Like we loved it. For Baker, it was we need that brashness, we need that attitude, But I don't see any of that with Shador. The guy just goes, and does he evoke confidence? Yeah, but what would you rather have? Would you rather have him saying, I'm going to go in there and change the franchise and anybody who doesn't draft me will regret it? Or would you rather have him saying, yeah, well, I hope I can do my best and come in and maybe win a game or two? Come on, man. Like for once in I don't know how long, we have a quarterback situation that we can be hopeful about. So lean into it, folks. Like this is a good thing. Shador, Dylan Gabriel, Flacco, the mentor, and I tell you, and Kenny Pickett, which we're gonna talk more about him, and because as much as I'm factoring him out of the mix, I don't think he's out of the mix, folks, and so we're gonna address that later on. But anyway, the Shador Effect, I love it. The Browns are relevant. He is stepping in on the right foot much more than Baker Mayfield did, and so I applaud Shador and everything that is happening to the Browns right now. Now, one thing I don't applaud, I hate to say, is this. What is most likely the end of the Nick Chubb era. Jerome Ford took a pay cut. And this apparently is what was hinging on whether or not the Browns would really go hard after Nick Chubb and try to get him back. But once he took the cut, he cut his salary in half, really, down to 1.7 from 3.4. Chubb would have been re-signed if he didn't accept the cut because he probably would have lost his roster spot, and then Chubb would have regained it because the Browns probably would have given Chubb that same amount of money. Again, this is the Watson effect. This is you only have so much money to move around, so you can thank Deshaun for this one too. So Nick Chubb now is probably the odd man out. Why? Because typically the Browns only keep 3 running backs on the roster. Unless they do an about face this year and add a 4th. But typically it's 3 running backs, and we've already got the 2 rookies along with Jerome Ford, and so we'll see. And hopefully they use Ford the right way. Well, I just think we misuse Ford a lot. And so we'll talk about Ford at another time. But anyway, the bottom line is I think it's the end of an era here in Cleveland. Nick Chubb, who has already been tied to the Chicago Bears, so he may end up, I hope he goes to the NFC, so we don't, God help us if he ends up in Pittsburgh, because I will lose my mind, just like the Will Howard thing. Here's the thing, and this is the one thing I think the Browns never get right. Can we latch onto somebody that we all love and just keep them around? Whether it's Nick Chubb, or we have a chance to draft Clay Matthews Jr., we don't. We have a chance to draft Jack Sawyer or Will Howard or both of them coming off the national championship. People we would root for up and down, and we don't do it. Sometimes I think the Browns whiff on these kind of things just from a PR standpoint and from a what do the fans want standpoint. And it's not like you're talking about bad players. You're not keeping bad players around just to keep them around. But I do think the Browns whiffed on this one a little bit, just like Clay Matthews or one of the Buckeyes. I don't know. My opinion. Let's move on to the viewer comments to wrap it up today. And boy, there's some good ones. All right, we're going to have to run through these because we're up against time here, folks. But Doug M2T says, Stefanski should have been fired after the Chiefs playoff game when he refused to use Kareem Hunt, who was coming into that game with a chip on his shoulder and was better than Chubb at the time. And then Stefanski also ruined Baker Mayfield's career, which we will talk about in the next show. But here's the thing. I don't know if he should have been fired over it, but yes, Kareem did come into that game with it. He had 6 carries, 32 yards, and a touchdown in that game. But yeah, probably could have used more. I think Chubb, I went back and looked. I think Chubb had 13 carries, and he only ran, I think, 69 yards, I think. So he didn't do much better. But I love the take. All right. Greatness Me 070 says, Shador was the only reason anyone watched the draft past day one. I agree. That's a fact, not speculation. Shador starts any game this year, it's going to be the most watched game ever. Yeah. I mean, as soon as he gets onto the field, all eyes are on us already. All eyes are on him already. Dylan Gabriel, tough hill to climb, but I mean, all eyes are on Shador. And the second he steps onto the field, it's going to be breaking news across the league. And so you're not wrong, Greatness. You are not wrong. Todd Parsley says Sanders will be the starting quarterback in Cleveland for the next 10 years. I like the way you're thinking. This is what we need. We need a franchise quarterback. And Sleeper 43 says the difference between the 11-win 2023 playoff team and the 2024 3-win team is the gross failure of the Ken Dorsey experiment and the carnage that was wrought upon our coaching staff. He says we've improved every room, meaning offensive line, the quarterback room, running backs, tight ends, the defensive line. Everything has been improved. The roster is now a whole lot better after draft weekend. And yeah, I mean, that's what it looks like on paper, Sleeper 43. And so that's what I mean, folks. Like there's going to be a lot of chatter back and forth. We have a town divided right now. Gabriel, Sanders. Nobody's even talking about Pickett and Flacco. He's just sitting there hanging out in his rocking chair, trying to figure out what he's going to be doing. And so I know he doesn't want to mentor, but he's going to mentor. And so this is the best situation we've had in the quarterback room in years, folks. So let's just lean into it. Okay, thanks so much for joining us. I leave you with this. May the 4th be with you. And go Browns. We'll see you next time.